Hi, Gay DeRusso with the Majestic Rider. So today I'm on Mr. Nichols. He's a Kentucky mountain horse, and we're going to show you his gait, okay? So he also has a flat walk, and what he likes to do is be a very lazy horse and not use himself. So you do have to push him. Otherwise, if you just ride him like this, he just gets very heavy on his front end, and he just kind of waddles around. So with him, you need to kind of get him to engage himself for him to use his body. So he does better with a shorter rein and with his head usually about that position for his flat walk. Each horse is different, so some horses, they do better with a little higher head carriage if they're on the trotty side or the way that they're using their back, and some do a little bit better with a lower head carriage. But he's built a little bit more downhill. He normally has a low head carriage, and so if he carries it lower, he just gets lazier and slower. Okay? And he tends to, when he's loose, he can pace and he can trot. So when you ride him in the arena, he tends to go more towards the pace when he's being lazy. See right there, he got a little pacey. Out on the trail, he can go a little bit more trotty and go into a foxtrot, which is quite nice. But in the arena, since I use him for lessons, he tends to get very lazy and just kind of waddle around sometimes. So he's a good one to use the poles for. And let's make him go over this little jump here. So make sure he's paying attention. And although he's usually quite sure-footed on the trail, he will get lazy if you let him. So he can be a little bit of a trickster, huh? So his flat walk, you'll see a little bit more back and forth motion, and sometimes you might see me go a little side to side, and that's when he's trying to get lazier and go a little bit more towards the pace. So with him, because he's lazy, I like to ride him a little bit with a stick, but I didn't grab one today, so we're just going to make do. So there he's a little pacey, so all I do is kind of just bend him, push his shoulders over, and that usually gets him out of the pace. If he still keeps doing it, I give a little half halt. So with him, he can carry himself very nicely, but he won't do it unless you make him do it. So I'd like to do a very good warm-up with him and do all the lateral movements. I already did circles and serpentine, so now I'm just working more on like leg yield and shoulder in. So all those basic dressage movements really help you with the pacey ones. That's a good reason to learn basic dressage, is to help your horse gait better. So that is if you're doing it naturally. So because he has different people riding him, then their gaits don't always stay as good because they try different things with different people and they get away with it. So the more you have one person riding the horse, and it's a good rider, the better their gaits will get. If you have a bunch of different people riding the horse and you keep switching around, or it's a guest horse, well then it usually is not going to gait as great. But again, some of them just gait when they're naturally, when they're loose. He doesn't. He either trots or paces. So those other horses, do better if they're going to be a guest horse, ones that just gait. That's just it. So with his flat walk, you'll see his head go up and down. But again, anytime you kind of see a waddle or me kind of swinging side to side, that's what his pace does. It's usually not a very hard bounce unless he hits a real hard pace, and that's usually when we're going for our next gait. Oh boy. So I taught him to back up every time we stopped because I was always trying to get him lighter in the bridle. Now, with this horse, with the bits, he was another one who didn't like bits, and I rode him with everything. I rode him in a hackamore, I rode him in a bitless bridle, and then I tried a bunch of different bits. And this is the one that did the best, because in the bitless bridle and hackamore, he got real heavy and he would just lean on it. And although he might have been comfortable in it, it wasn't safe for us because then he was getting too heavy on his front end. So this is a wonder bit. It's harder for him to lean on it, and it has just a little bit of a twist, which makes him not want to lean on it because it's not comfortable to do so. But you'll see with him, I have a light contact, but I do have contact the whole time until I go to his next gait, and then I can loosen up a little bit. But until I go to that next gait, I kind of have to help him because at this speed, he tends to get slow and lazy in here. Okay. So you might have a horse like that, and you just got to know if they're lazy and you don't keep pushing them and riding them, those are the ones that tend to kind of fall asleep on their feet. Okay? And you don't want that. So it's better to, wear a little spurs or carry a stick or give them lots of little jobs to do to keep them awake when you're riding them. So with him, his flat walk's okay. But his saddle gait is actually pretty fun. See how he got a little, he's like, am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to stop? And that's what happens when you get lots of different people riding him. The horse kind of gets confused. So it's best if you just have one person riding the horse or two, unless it's a lesson horse, of course. All right. So each horse is different, but some horses, they have like a secret sweet spot, and that's where their gait is the best. Okay? And it's finding how to get to that sweet spot consistently in order to get that gait. With him, it's warming up pretty well ahead of time, and then as I go faster, not having his head too low, and I like it up just a little bit. It's kind of about horn level or just a little bit higher, and that's usually when he does his saddle gait pretty well. Now you'll see he's not leaning on me now, but if I just let the reins go, you'll see his head gets lower and lower. So he does good for a lesson horse because he's quiet. He likes to stop. So that makes him pretty safe. And but he can move. If you know how to ride, he can actually move out quite nicely, which I'm going to show you in a minute. But he is on the lazier side, so if I stop riding, he usually comes right back down. And that's good horses for most people, unless you're super, super lazy and don't want to learn anything and you want to be a passenger. Then horses like this will start to fall asleep on you and not listen to you, and then it's not such a good fit. Okay? All right, so watch. I'm going to release. I'm going to think backwards. Even though I'm not pulling, he backs up because I did that every single time, all the time. Good boy. Now. Okay. So when we go to his saddle gait, I'm going to set him up for it. I'm going to try to get him in a frame where his head's about there, and he's kind of collected, and then I'm going to ask him to go faster. Now, some of the time, because he's had the lesson people on him, he goes into a pace. So if he goes into the pace, I'm going to push his shoulders over, and I'm going to push his body over. The hard part is as you do that with your horse, if you don't hold them at the same time, they usually just shoot forward, and they pace harder. So you got to have enough contact that then they know to move sideways and then forward. And that's the hard part about finding that sweet spot. And then when I get it, I can let him go and sit there, and we'll gait pretty good for a while, and then I might have to push him over again and hold him and get him back into it. So let's try before he falls asleep. But again, me showing you and then the person doing it can be quite different because I have good balance in all of that. And if you don't have good balance and you don't know how to use your back and your stomach if the horse is pulling, then that can make it harder. Okay, so this is just his flat walk. So let's start adding leg and speeding up. Now, if you see me start swinging side to side, that means he's going towards a pace. Now, here he's not bad. That's more towards a running walk. Now I'm going to lift his head up just a little bit and kind of push his hind quarter over because it's swinging out. Now right there he hit a pace, and all I did was relax my leg and take it off some. So this is quite nice. You'll see a little waddle to him, but not bad. That means he kind of goes side to side. But see, my reins are pretty loose. They're not long, but I'm not really tugging on him. I'm just giving him a little support to help him, because I got to give him enough support to help him get his body framed up to do that gait. Okay, now we're going to try and go a little bit faster, so I'm going to kiss him, but I'm going to hold him at the same time so he doesn't think he's supposed to canter or anything. Now you'll kind of see as I'm going around, I got just a little wiggle in the saddle, and that's how you know you're usually doing a saddle gait. It's either smooth or just a little bit of a wiggle. And see, now his head's up, but he's gaiting pretty well. So we're just going to leave it there. I'll loosen up so you can kind of see. But now that my reins are longer, I can't help him as much. See what he's doing? Now he's starting to pace. So I'm going to hold contact, but see how much harder it is with this longer rein? My hands are almost back at my belly. Now he's got it. Now I'm going to let him go again. So that's the hard part. If your horse doesn't gait well and your reins are too long, it's harder to help them. So even though I can help him, I'd like it a little bit shorter because it's easier both for him and for me. So I'm pushing him over. The only thing he's doing is kind of falling in. Now there he's going quite good, isn't he? So we're going to stop. So we're going to stop. Oh. Now, when we stopped, did you see him? He's going like that. He pulled right on that bit. And that tells you that horse is heavy and you don't want them to do that. So I kind of backed him off it. So I'm going to give him a break just for a minute because he was doing really well till that. And then we're going to go off again. Anytime they pull, if you can, you want to lock yourself down because the horse pulls and people fall forward and then the horse gets a release. So when they pull, what you want to do is tighten your thigh, tighten your back and stomach muscles, and just hold. Don't get in a tugging where just hold, brace yourself, wait for the horse then to think about it and release, and then once they release, then you can release. But if they pull on you and they get the rein out of your hand or pull you forward, they get their own release and then they start pulling on you all the time. So it's very important to have good balance so you can do things like that and kind of brace yourself back. All right, so now we're going to start speeding up again. So it seemed he tried to do one little canter step, and all I did was pull on the reins and go, nope. But I kept my leg on him, so he kept moving. So with him, he's fun to ride, but he can be hard for people because you got to find that sweet spot. So right now, he's not bad, but he's got his head a little bit low. And again, when he gets it low, he can tend to pull on it sometimes. So it's still not that good yet. It's not bad, but so I'm half halting and trying to bring his head up a little bit, and then I release. Right there, he's pretty good. So now I'm just steering him with my legs. There, he just kind of, his ligament gave out a little bit. I just sat back. Now, right now, he's pulling, so I'm going to hold. I'm going to dig my leg into him, a little spur, till he stops pulling, and I release. So you're trying to, when they increase pressure on you, you increase pressure back so they don't learn to lean on you. So now let's go across and go the other way. So again, I could let go of him. He knows what my signals are, but when the lesson people let go of him, he thinks he's supposed to canter. And then they stop to talk to me, and then he thinks he's done the right thing. So what do you think he does? Then he canters more. So try not to stop when they're doing the wrong thing. Like correct them and keep going, and then stop when they're doing the right thing. Now he's a little heavy, so I kind of touched him with my spur, just touched him lightly, like, hey, let's keep going. So when you So when you get it, you can just sit here, but it's getting it and figuring out how to use your body and how to get that signal to the horse. That's the hard part. So some of us who've been doing this a long time, we can just get on and be like, you just do this and this and this, and they just gait. What's the problem? But when you don't know the signals, you don't know how to use your hands, your legs, or your body, it can be quite hard. Okay, now you'll see I'm not leaning forward like this. I kind of sit back on him because he's heavy on that front end. So even though he can get a little pacey, I don't want to lean forward and put more weight up there, just in case they do trip. Rather sit back. So here he's pretty good. So see, I'm going to let go so you see what happens. Now look, he's trotting. Like, where did that come from? That's because he can pace and trot, so it just happened. So with him, he always goes best if I keep just a little contact. So it's light, but it's just the right amount. That's what you got to kind of figure out with some of these horses. And the saddle gait is different than the running walk or the foxtrot. You got to ride it just a little bit different to get it. And you got to figure out what works best for your horse. So you got to kind of play around. Is it with their head up? Is that good? Yeah, that works for this guy. Look at that. And then you might say, well, is it head down? Let me try that. No, I don't like that as much. Because I'm trying to go fast and he's slowing down. It's okay smoothness-wise, but I'm like, no. I'll kind of tap him with my spur a little bit. His head up, sit back, and off we go. If they do that half canter step, or what I call a gait elope, you just kind of half halt with one hand, which means squeeze on the rein, and half halt with the other. And what that does is slide the bit across their tongue, and usually gets them out of that hoppy step. Okay? All right, we're going to give them a break for a minute. I'm just going to talk to you. We tried to move away from the chicken, so hopefully you can hear us, right? You're such a pretty boy. So a lot of the Rockies, Kentucky Mountain, or if you're just trying to get a saddle gait with your horse, the hard part is finding that sweet spot. And depending on how they're built, so that's their conformation, and depending on how they use their body, and if they're trotty versus pacey, or they just gait, depends what you do with their head and neck and all of that. So you're trying to find out what helps that horse the most. And because their conformation is different and because they move differently, each horse is a little bit different. And that's the hard part, is trying to play around to help them. So some horses, you'll hear me say, well, if they're trotty, bring their head up. Well, how high? Well, usually with the Rockies, if they're really trotty, you might have to bring their head up like a giraffe until you get that gait, and then you slowly lower it over time once they can hold it. But with a Tennessee walking horse, if it's on the trotty side, and I'm trying to get like the running walk or the saddle gait, I won't want it as high, because they usually do better if it's a little bit here and not so high here, because they really get too inverted sometimes. And if it's not like him, I kind of want it, almost in between. And that's the hard part, is trying to figure out where that is. But you can play around, and if all of a sudden you get one smooth step, immediately stop and try to figure out, where did I have his head? How was I sitting? How fast were we going? And then try to repeat that over.